This is breaking news. Scott Taylor, former congressman, 2nd District in Virginia Beach. Scott Taylor, former House of Delegates member, has officially announced, we have teased this and told you it was coming for months. He has officially announced his candidacy for the Republican nomination for U.S. Senate to run against Mark Warner in 2020. This will be decided in a primary voted on by the State Central Committee, I think about a week ago or so. The Senate nomination will be a primary. It'll be in June of 2020. Scott Taylor will win that primary, and I've got him right now rated at 50-50. Scott Taylor's candidacy is Mark Warner's worst nightmare come true. He's the only Republican in Virginia who could beat Warner. He's the only Republican in Virginia that could raise the money in order to compete with him. He's got President Trump's back. The president will come here, I predict, and do at least 2 rallies on his behalf to get out the vote. And Scott Taylor is a tireless campaigner with a sterling track record as a former Navy SEAL, and he's been exonerated from the Siggate episode in Virginia Beach, and the fake news basically cost him that race. But now he's like, the heck with that, and he's running for U.S. Senate. We're very excited about it. It's going to be a great race. Scott, great to have you on, man.
John, it's great to be with you and all your listeners out there in Virginia. It's a great day.
Hey, I'm excited about this. I'm not even going to feign controlling my excitement about your race because I think this is going to be a classic race. Got upset written all over it. Mark Warner last time only winning 1% over Ed Gillespie, and Ed ran probably the worst campaign for U.S. Senate since he ran against Jim Gilmore. I believe was a terrible campaign. He didn't stand for anything, and he only got beat by 1%. What's the motivating factor here for the Scott Taylor for U.S. Senate campaign?
Well, I would say the underlying motivating factor is as it was before for Congress. Look, help people, solve problems, have a say in the direction, making sure this country goes in the correct direction, if you will. Helping with veterans, helping with businesses, and listen to people who haven't been listened to around the Commonwealth, and go represent them and tell their stories in the U.S. Senate. That's the motivation. When you look at Mark Warner, I think the New York Times said it best when they described him, and they said that he has slogged through the Senate with little signature achievements. So that's from the New York Times. And I think, and I'm a terminal guy, you know that, John. 12 years is good to go. He's been there for 12 years, and if the New York Times says that you've been slogging through the Senate with no signature achievements in 12 years, it's time for a new job.
Well, look, Mark Warner he is who he is. I mean, he was a business guy. He's going to be a tough opponent, but I think you bring a lot of enthusiasm. I mean, this is really the first candidacy that I've looked at and said, wow, this is an opportunity for Republicans to really win Virginia, because I know you're going to get a big vote in Hampton Roads. You're going to get a big majority in Southwest Virginia, and I think you're going to do better in Northern Virginia than other candidates have done.
We're going to be working really hard. I mean, it's important that all Republicans come together to be able to defeat Mark Warner. You know, we need to be together to be able to do that. I know that there's a crisis in leadership in Virginia, and we're hungry. We're hungry for change there. As you said, we're going to be all through Virginia. We'll be in Northern Virginia. We'll be speaking to communities that maybe Republicans haven't, shown a lot of time in. We're going to be spending a lot of time in Northern Virginia for sure to be able to get some of those votes. But I'm not under any illusion that we are the underdogs in this race. There's no question about that. But we're going to move forward. We're gonna take some left hooks. We might even hit the canvas, but we'll get back up. We'll keep dusting our knees off and moving forward and representing, we the people out there, the Uber drivers, the people who wear the uniform, the people who lay the bricks, the people who are in small businesses. And Mark Warner's going to be tough for sure, but I think I don't have anything personal against him. I know when he was a good governor. He worked across the aisle, but since he went to Washington, his record it's verifiable. It's moved far to the left. He has, he was a businessman. He's talked businesses, and when he first got there, he voted with the little guy, with the Chamber of Commerce, with manufacturers. But if you look at his score now, it's like 0% for small business. It's very low for manufacturers. It's much lower on the Chamber of Commerce. So he's clearly changed. I don't think that Mark Warner of today in the Senate would recognize or understand that Governor Mark Warner of the past.
All right, let's get to some of the issues that I want to flesh out here, Scott Taylor, and I believe that you will be the nominee. I don't know if there's anybody else that's going to run, but I'm going to predict right now, I knew as soon as you get in, you're going to be the nominee. If anybody else decides to run, they're not going to have the cachet, the experience that you have. So I think you win that primary. Even if there is one, you might not get opposition. Let's go to Iran. The neocons rattling their sabers. John Bolton wants to drop bombs or whatever he's trying to do in the White House. What say you?
Look, Ambassador Bolton is a friend of mine. He's a very, very smart man, but I think that the president's gut instincts are right here, and I think that he's tempered. John Bolton's, what he would like to do, of course, and I think the president has done a good job of exercising restraint with Iran. So I like the fact that John Bolton has a seat at the table because he is a smart man that's learned and has plenty of experiences. And he can give good counsel to the president, but the president is strong. He's a strong leader, so he's able to temper people like that. So I think the president was right here with his gut instincts.
You fought for a new AUMF, Scott Taylor, when you were in the House of Representatives. I know personally that you went to Paul Ryan's office at least one time. He made a commitment on it, and then he basically lied to you. I mean, I want to call it like it is. If you're in the United States Senate along with Tim Kaine, are you going to fight for new AUMF?
Yeah, my view on that has not changed. I mean, the AUMF is over what is it, going on 18 years now, and it was set up, of course, after 9/11 to be able to fight Al Qaeda and its affiliates. And it's 3 subsequent presidents have used it to expand their authority and engage in areas that we never thought that we would be in against affiliates that are not Al Qaeda. So I think it is absolutely important that Congress doesn't continue to abdicate the responsibility over to an executive branch, whether it's a Republican or Democrat in the executive in the White House. It's important that that thing is changed, tightened up, and updated to where we are today.
Scott Taylor, although this is kind of not a federal issue, the pipelines in Virginia is still raging debate here. The Mountain Valley Pipeline, the Atlantic Coast Pipeline, eventually the feds are going to have to weigh in on this, both of them now stalled in various lawsuits. Are you in favor of these pipelines continuing through Virginia?
I'll just say in general, John, because I'm not privy to all the details and where we are with that right now, but you have to have energy. You have to have energy, and you have to cheap. Natural gas is obviously cleaner energy, and I'm a proponent of that energy getting to small businesses, big businesses, and residential folks to reduce their electricity bills and be cleaner for the environment. So I think that we can do it responsibly. I think we can extend those things, pipelines, to be able to get energy where it's needed and be environmentally friendly about it. So it's very clear that you have to have energy for economic progress.
Will you accept the enthusiastic support of the president in your campaign for U.S. Senate, Scott Taylor?
There's no question. As you know, we set up the first event for the president to come down.
That's right.
In his primary.
That's right.
So emceed an event for him, spoke at another event. Absolutely. Absolutely. I'd be honored if the president came down.
We're certainly going to encourage him to do that and tell him this race is winnable. But I got to tell you, I just want to tell my audience this. When President Trump was running for president the first time, and Virginia was one of the key primaries, this was Super Tuesday, March 1st, 2016, all the way back in January, Scott Taylor was urging then candidate Trump to come to Virginia Beach. He had set one thing up himself personally that got canceled because of hurricane something, right? And then you were instrumental in setting the president up when he came to that battleship. Remember that, the Wisconsin? And
yeah, absolutely. We helped him. He was look. No one's perfect, of course, but he was the one who was speaking to Americans across the country at that time and what they needed to hear. And we are in a transitional time in our country, and I think. Look, like I said, no one's perfect, but the president. I mean, look at what's happened. Look at the policies that have been put in place. Look at the progress. Look at the economy. I mean, I don't think this is with all due respect, but I think he was the man for the job at the time. No
question about it. And I appreciate what you did, and you were also part of the Trump team in Virginia in 2016 during the general election. You were one of the co-chairs of the state, and you worked tirelessly for the president in 2016. And, Virginia was relatively competitive. So let me just ask you this. What are going to be your key issues for U.S. Senate campaigning against Mark Warner? If you can give me your top three things, Scott Taylor, what would they be?
Well, there are issues that we've already worked on, right? Clearly the economy, making sure that continuing what the president and the Congress has done when they were under Republicans in terms of reducing regulations and allowing for this small businesses and people to thrive. That's one thing, of course. Taking care of veterans, making sure that the VA is retooled to where it needs to be for this century, of course, making sure it's properly funded, making sure exactly what we did. We're the first Republican freshman from Virginia ever to be appointed to the Appropriations Committee. We helped to bring hundreds of millions of dollars of much-needed infrastructure for our bases in Virginia. One of the things that Mark Warner, as I told you with the New York Times, when they said he's slogging through the Senate with few signature achievements, that's not the case. When you sent me to Richmond in the Capitol, we got laws passed helping veterans, helping energy, helping technology businesses. And then when you sent me to Congress, not only did we get on Appropriations Committee, but less than 3% of bills that are introduced into Congress become law. I passed 2 of them in 2 years, one to have accountability at the Veterans Affairs at the highest level, as well as the Ashanti Alert Act, which will save lives for missing adults around the country. So the contrast here is very clear when you look at 12 years from Mark Warner, which again I'm for term limits with no achievements, and then you look at us there, what we've done in the short time we were there. We're going to bring that accountability, effectiveness, and the ability to get things done for Virginians all across the Commonwealth.
You're on the John Fredericks Radio Network, trucking the truth across America. I'm your Godzilla of the Truth. We're with former House of Representatives, U.S. Representative Scott Taylor, 2nd District. And Scott has just announced his candidacy for U.S. Senate from Virginia in 2022. I'm a big supporter of his, encouraged his run. I think he can win, no question about it. Let me ask you something. 2 tough questions here. Number one, the signature gate led to your defeat at the hands of Elaine Loria in 2018 for the 2nd Congressional District. Some say you've been exonerated. Some say, well, it's not really clear. How do you explain that?
Well, a couple of things. I think there were a lot of contributing factors to the election itself. What I will tell you is it's very clear that there's an exoneration there, no matter what the Democrats would say. But I think most importantly, and I'll sum it all up, we can't guarantee success in this campaign, but I promise you that we will deserve it.
I like that. Well, look, as far as I can see, you've been exonerated, you've been accused of no wrongdoing, and you've been cleared. And certainly that led to your defeat by Elaine Loria in 2018. You've had to deal with that, and you didn't do anything wrong.
I suspect they will try to defame me once more, but we will be prepared for that, of course. But like I said, in sum, while we can't guarantee success in our campaign, we will absolutely deserve it.
So one of the raps on you, Scott, is that you're always looking for the next job or the next level of politics. Can you give us assurance that you're going to fully focus on this 2020 race and that this is not a stepping stone for Scott Taylor 21 or 22 or some other campaign, that this is going to be your main focus and not just a stepping stone to something else in the short term?
100%. Like national, international issues are my passion, my educational background, my experience. I would have happily stayed in Congress and continued to work for people and get things done, which is exactly what we were doing. So there's no question that would be my 100% focus.
How do you beat Mark Warner?
Well, I can't give you my total strategy on the air, John, of course, but I think it's pretty clear that there are a lot of folks out there who liked Mark Warner as governor, and then sort of that goodwill carried over in the Senate. But it's also very clear that his record is much different in governor, and his votes have been bad for borders. They've been bad for business, and they've been bad, quite frankly, for babies. So I think there are a lot of people who are willing to jump ship, even some moderates, with Mark Warner. Also, we're going to be in communities that a lot of Republicans don't go to very often. But I've spent years overseas in South Central America. I've spent years in the Middle East. I understand different cultures, and as you know very well, our demographics have been changing in Virginia, and I can relate in those communities better than anyone on our side. So I think it's going to be surprising for the left, quite frankly, and how well we're going to do in some of these communities that Republicans typically are not in.
Are you going to campaign in Northern Virginia? I mean, Warner won Fairfax, I think, last time by 60 or 70,000 votes. That's what put him over the top. Are you going to actively seek out support in Northern Virginia? And if so, how do you plan to do that?
You know me, John. I go everywhere, and I will be everywhere, and I will absolutely be in Northern Virginia in communities and that, again, I have fluency in Spanish. I will be all in Latin communities. We'll be in temples and mosques and, all everywhere. We'll go everywhere because I think it's important. I think our message is better. I think our party, and why I'm a member of it, of course, is that we focus on the individual more than extending government control over our lives. And I think that message resonates with folks in those communities, but you have to show them that you care about them. People aren't going to support you if they don't think you care. And I think that we're going to go tell that story. We're going to talk about issues. We're going to talk about our values. And I think they're going to resonate in communities that a lot of Republicans and certainly Democrats still think they will.
If you get to the U.S. Senate, Scott Taylor, are you going to get us out of these wars? Yemen, Afghanistan, Iraq, Syria?
Well, I can tell you, John, we've had this conversation many times. I mean, these wars, I will feel them in my body, my mind, and my heart for the rest of my life. I've listened to Amazing Grace play on the bagpipes more than I wish on anyone, burying good friends of mine. So I understand the cost of these wars. I understand the toll it takes not only on us as soldiers, but also our families and the country. And I think it's important that we tighten up that AUMF like we talked about to be able to get us out of these wars, quite frankly. Now, we have to, as you know, I mean, I'm not an isolationist. If we need to handle business because we're attacked, our interests are attacked, then we need to do so. But we need to do so fast and furious and then get out of there. We don't need to be nation building. We don't need to be spending all that money overseas. I don't think that's worked very well. And you know me, we've had this conversation so many times. I will work with Tim Kaine on a new AUMF.
I know you will. Well, listen, Scott, I think you're Mark Warner's worst nightmare. I think you're the only Republican candidate in Virginia that can give him a competitive race and beat him. I am an unabashed, enthusiastic supporter of Scott Taylor for U.S. Senate and for the Republican nomination. I'm not even going to hide that. You got my full endorsement today, and I'm really excited.
Appreciate you.
Look, I'm really excited about your campaign. I'm excited about what you can do in the U.S. Senate, and I'm excited about a second Trump term and Scott Taylor in the U.S. Senate. Scott, thanks for coming on our show. Good luck.
John, Virginia's in play for the president and us. The race is on. Thank you, sir.
All right, John Fredericks Radio Network. Scott Taylor running for U.S. Senate. I like Mark Warner a lot. This is his worst nightmare scenario. John Fredericks, right back at you.